Greetings, Gamecock fans. Good afternoon. This is a special Inside the Gamecocks, the BigSpur.com podcast drop as South Carolina's picked up another big verbal commit from Amari Thomas, four-star 24/7 Sports four-star running back from Blountstown, Florida. Really good player. Nice pickup. Dug into his film a little bit today and I watched it for kind of the second or third time. And a lot stands out about him. First and foremost, I think when you watch what he is, and then you combine that with some feedback and intel that you've picked up, you kind of arrive at the conclusion this is the type of back South Carolina was targeting first and foremost in this class. They have some good young running backs with eligibility left, although everybody but Oscar Attaway and Rasul Faison would be out of eligibility, but you have Howell there, you have Fuller there still, and you have Isaiah Augustov. God, wow, why do I struggle with that? They'd like to sign two high school backs. They may end up with one and have to go to the portal for another. You got two good ones in 2027 in the state of South Carolina. But Amari Thomas was big. You know, they lost Carson Baker, their number one target out of Atlanta, to the Florida Gators. I think they're still keeping in touch with him, but he seems pretty solid to the Gators. And Carson was this type of back, same type of back that Amari is. Kind of that guy that once he gets in the open field, he's gone. Amari's 5'10", around 200 pounds. Really good frame to put on good weight when you kind of look at his body style. You look at his footwork on film. It's very, very good. He has such good feet that he's able to be a very patient back. Patience sometimes at running back. You have guys that maybe use that in lieu of breakaway speed, but this guy, he's a patient runner. Doesn't just run like full speed like he shot out of a cannon, but he's also the running style wise. Once he gets into the open field with his stride and his ability to accelerate, he's gone. So very good breakaway speed, but also some natural gifted running ability. I don't know how big he's going to get, so maybe he won't get as big as Mike Davis the second at South Carolina. But that kind of guy, Mike Davis got a little bigger, had put on some weight, but didn't lose any speed. But, that type of guy, once he gets to the open field, you're probably not going to catch him, but also physical enough to go between the tackles. Amari probably has vision wise, I don't know, stands out just a little more than Mike did, but Mike had really good vision too coming out of high school. So I'm not quite sure I'd go all the way there to say his vision's superior to Mike Davis's or that Mike's superior to his, but I like the vision and the patience combined with, what you normally see out of a speed back, which is kind of one cut, find the open spot and take it to the house at the high school level. I believe he's the type of back Mike Shula likes in his offense. He's got speed. He likes to run some outside zone. These guys can be lethal in that department. If you remember Noel, the running back from Appalachian State that transferred to Missouri that ran for a bunch of yards against Carolina this past season doing outside zone, that's, he's similar to Amari Thomas. Really nice back, though. Has some Florida dog in him, competitiveness. I like that. But in Mike Shula's offense moving forward, I think, this is the type of guy I think they said that they probably needed more of it. And again, it's not that the other backs are slow. When you say speed back, you got a bunch of plotters. They're just different styles. This guy's a different style runner than Jawarn Howell. He's a different style runner than Matthew Fuller. He's a different style runner than Isaiah Augustov. He's just different than Rasul Faison. But the type of guy that I think could be really beneficial. Marquell Blackwell, Darren Usher, Shane Beamer, head coach, personnel guy, running backs coach, they all worked on this extremely hard. I think it's probably pretty good that Marquell Blackwell got this guy just because that's fans expect, that. And he hadn't gotten one and missed out before, so on a couple of guys. But I always said judge him for 2027 because there's two studs in the state. But getting Amari Thomas is nice. You don't see often in recruiting South Carolina go into the backyard of bigger brands. And I hate we're even using that term brand nowadays to refer to football programs, but known entities that typically get who they want close to their campus and beat them or within their state. Now, Clarksville, Tennessee, in the Kamari Blair situation, that's nowhere near Knoxville, but it's in their state. You know, so now we get to Thomas, and he was committed to FSU, and Blountstown's right there, close to Tallahassee. But so you beat Florida State on a player in their backyard. You beat Tennessee on an in-state offensive lineman, and you beat Auburn in the state of Alabama on one of the best quarterback prospects in America. Folks, that's big. Star ratings and stuff like that aside, you look at programs that have elevated, and really there are two that have gotten to where everybody would like for them to be through the years. Kansas State would count too, but they're kind of an outlier. I don't think anybody's going to want to go recruit a bunch of junior college players right about now. But you look at who's elevated on the national scene, played for a national championship, won one. And you look at Clemson and you look at Oregon, and that's kind of how through recruiting they started building. Oregon would go into somewhere else in Texas or wherever and beat the Blue Bloods on guys. They'd go into LA and beat Southern Cal on guys. And they didn't win them all. They didn't win most of them. But they started collecting pieces, and then they recruited their way at their core and added to that. And I think that's there's a track record to doing that. Clemson, I use them as a reference because you folks are familiar with their program. They beat Florida in their backyard on C.J. Spiller. They, started going and beating, Florida and Florida State on guys like Sammy Watkins, kind of pieced it together. And they go into Georgia and win some battles. And then they worked up and down, North Carolina, Virginia. They would work that as well as kind of their base, South Carolina as well. And then they got to where they're going, and then they really started doing it. They went into Florida and got Deion Kane. They went into the backyard of the Hokies and got Cleveland Farrell. They went up north and beat Penn State for Christian Wilkins. And then right there in the shadow of University of Tennessee, they got T. Higgins. So they were good at that too, as far as getting their roster to the point where they go win championships. We don't need to talk about that again, but that is a good point. You start going and taking players out of the backyard. Alabama under Nick Saban did it all the time. They had a core of Alabama and Georgia kids, and they beat Georgia in Georgia's backyard on players. And then they just spot all over the country, They still have an offensive tackle right now. They beat Iowa on. The kid went back to Iowa for a minute and said, "No, I'd rather be at Bama." I came back, and Caden Proctor. So you can really benefit yourself that way by winning battles and going and kind of just picking off players from other schools' backyard. So you may say, well, what about Julian Walker? Michigan got him out of Carolina's backyard. Yeah, you need to get most of the players in your little territory as well. And then, in all reality, have states like Virginia, North Carolina, D.C., Maryland, that area where Shane Beamer's done a really good job in those states. Darius Gray commit coming up. You need to do a good job there, kind of in your base. Georgia as well. But, those 3 to 5 guys that you can win battles against their home state school on, I've seen that work before. Not a guarantee, but I've seen it work before, and this is the third time it's happened in this cycle. So hats off to everybody that's involved with this, because these are things that don't normally happen. Just like signing out-of-state 5-stars don't normally happen around here. Have not happened until Shane Beamer got here. And you look at the success of the program, recruiting. I know sometimes I say, well, rankings and stuff like that are kind of overvalued, and they are and they aren't. They're like odds. Your odds increase. But what gets me sometimes is people, if you get a 3-star commit, the fans of that school will start just trashing the kid. You've never even seen him play. You don't even know anything about him. You're just looking at the stars, and that's not that kind of bothered me. But recruiting rankings and stuff like that are more like odds. But when you start looking at kind of the what are you doing in recruiting that's different? because obviously there's been talent here, but it's, not always been just coaching at South Carolina. South Carolina hadn't had as many good players as other schools. And for years, people blamed it on the state of South Carolina. When there is good players in the state of South Carolina, they blamed it on geography. Oh, they're surrounded by this school and that school. Well, how do you counterbalance that if that's even true? Well, you kind of do what I call pickpocket recruiting, and you go pluck one or two here or there, and pretty soon that adds up, and you got a lot of good players on your roster, and that's just high school recruiting. That's not even talking about the portal, which is a godsend for a lot of programs. And so this is a big deal. This is a big deal. It's also a big deal to get a high school running back that's a composite four-star. Amari rushed for 1,880 yards, 34 touchdowns last year. He was at Mariana High School, and Blountstown is where he's at as his senior year. 34 touchdowns is awesome. Over 12 yards per carry, 8.9 yards per carry as a sophomore. So he's been at it for a while. Kind of running style. In addition to the Mike Davis comparison, D'Angelo Williams, who actually, I believe, played for Mike Shula with the Panthers. He wasn't on the Super Bowl team. Went to the Steelers, but Williams was that 5'9", 207, 208-pound guy, that could pack it on, that had a low center of gravity, tough runner, but shifty and elusive, that type of thing. Amari Thomas has good hands out of the backfield, too. I like him. I think he's a really good pickup. And, you think about Rasul Faison and what they like about him, and why they like him a lot. And Amari Thomas kind of does some of the same types of things. He's not there yet, as far as was he going to step in and start next year? Probably not, but who knows? But I doubt it. But he is he's that type of back that can do a lot of different things well, so a good pickup for the Gamecocks. It's commitment number 15 for the 2026 recruiting cycle. And they beat the Seminoles in their backyard. Flipped another guy from Florida State last year. It was Malik Clark. He flipped him, but he's a Rock Hill kid, so you kind of expect that. It is indeed unprecedented to go into the Big Bend area of Florida and beat the mighty Noles. I guess they're still weren't so mighty last year. Hopefully, for their sake, they get back. But this was a good piece of recruiting by the University of South Carolina football staff, and a good piece of news here on a Friday afternoon for Gamecock Nation. This has been J.C. Shurburtt. It's been a special report here. Amari Thomas commits to South Carolina. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll holla at you soon.